Captain Jax Ward had spent the last 3 years trying to forget the war. He lived on a lonely mining moon where no one visited and nothing ever changed. His small metal house sat between cold rocks and silent dust storms. It was a quiet life, but it was safe, and he liked safe. One gray evening, Jax walked toward the old supply station to collect spare fuel cells. The sky was filled with dark clouds swirling like smoke. The wind carried a strange smell, something burnt and sharp. Jax frowned and tightened his jacket, sensing trouble. Near the ruined Eastern District, he heard a sound that stopped his heart for a moment. A soft cry, almost like a child calling for help. But it was mixed with a faint growl, something wild and scared. Jax froze, listening carefully. He thought maybe it was an animal caught in the wreckage, but the sound came again, this time clearer, higher, trembling. He felt his soldier instincts waking, the ones he tried to forget. He walked toward the broken building, its roof half collapsed and walls blackened by old fire. The cry came from inside the dark, smoke-filled hall. Jax covered his mouth with his sleeve and stepped in. The floor creaked under his boots, and dust filled the air. He heard another tiny whimper, followed by scratching. Someone, or something, was trapped inside. Jax pushed aside broken metal sheets and burning wires. Then he saw them. 2 small shapes curled behind a fallen support beam. 2 little bodies shaking, eyes wide and glowing faintly in the dark. Hybrid cubs, part feline, part humanoid, with soft fur, long tails, and small hands clutching each other. They looked at Jax with fear and confusion. One cub had silver fur with golden stripes. The other was dark brown with glowing blue eyes. They were shaking from cold, hunger, and fear. Jax slowly knelt and whispered, "It's okay, I won't hurt you." The silver cub hissed weakly, trying to act brave, but the brown cub hid behind him, sniffing and trembling. Jax put down his weapon, showing his empty hands. He said, "I just want to help," softly. His voice was calm, gentle, something he had not used in years. A long moment, the silver cub crawled forward. He reached out a tiny hand and touched Jack's glove. His claws were small but sharp. The brown cub followed, eyes big and glowing. Jax picked them both up slowly, one arm supporting each tiny body. They were lighter than he expected, and he could feel their thin ribs through their fur. "You poor things," he whispered. "Who left you here?" Suddenly, a bright red dot flashed on the wall. Jax turned sharply, his instinct screaming. A small drone hovered in the corner, half hidden behind rubble. Its metal body was scratched, but still working. Its single lens focused on Jax and the cubs, glowing with intelligence. Before Jax could react, the drone beeped twice and flew out of the ruin. Jax stared after it, uneasy. Someone had been watching the cubs. Someone who did not want them saved. He carried the cubs out of the burning ruin and wrapped them in his thick jacket. The brown cub clung to his chest, burying his face into Jack's shirt. The silver cub kept looking behind them, as if expecting someone to return. Jax walked fast, feeling the cold evening wind bite his skin. The sky was darkening, and the moon's 3 shadow rings glowed faintly above. Inside his metal cabin, Jax placed the cubs on a soft blanket and turned on the heater. He found emergency food packs and warm water. The cubs ate so fast they almost choked. They were starving, frightened, exhausted. When they finished eating, the brown cub curled against Jack's leg and whispered, "Home?" His voice was tiny, broken, like he hadn't spoken in days. Jax felt a heavy ache inside his chest. He gently stroked the cub's head and said, "You can stay here for now." When the cubs finally fell asleep, Jax began examining the strange collars around their necks. The collars were old, cracked, but still glowing with faint energy. Each had a small symbol burned into the metal, a circle with 3 sharp lines like claws, surrounded by golden flame-like shapes. Jax had seen this symbol only once during the war. It was the crest of the Feline Queen, the royal leader who vanished years ago after her cubs were rumored to be taken by unknown hunters. Some soldiers believed the legend, some laughed at it. But the symbol on the cubs' collars was real. Jax sat back in shock. "These kids, they can't be," he whispered. But the truth was written clearly on their collars and in the glowing markings on their fur. He hadn't rescued random cubs. He had taken in the missing royal offspring of the Feline Queen. And someone out there already knew, because the drone that escaped was not a simple machine. It carried a message. A cold, metallic voice whispered through the night sky. "Targets found. Prepare the hunters." Jax didn't hear the transmission, but he felt a strange chill. Something dangerous was coming, and those 2 tiny cubs sleeping under his roof were at the center of a storm he did not yet understand.
Jax followed the glowing star map through the ancient tunnels until he reached a hidden exit. A narrow metal hatch opened into a small, forgotten hangar buried deep under the moon's surface. Inside the hangar rested an old cargo ship covered in dust, cobwebs, and faded alien markings. The cubs stared at it with amazement, their glowing eyes reflecting the dim lights. The silver cub whispered, "Mother used ship like this long time ago." The brown cub held Jax's hand tightly. "Can fly?" Jax gave a short nod. "If it still has a working core, we have a chance." He climbed inside the ship, checking the controls, fuel cells, engine room, and emergency systems. Most panels were cracked, and the screens flickered weakly. But the main core still hummed with low power, alive like a sleeping heart. Jax smiled slightly. "This old bird still breathes." The cubs watched him press buttons, connect power cables, and clean the dust from the flight screen. The ship rumbled as life returned to it, lights glowing softly across the cockpit. The silver cub purred quietly. "Feels warm, safe." Jax set a new course based on the glowing star map stored in his portable scanner. Their destination was the Forbidden Zone, a dead world surrounded by storms and broken space. A place soldiers whispered about but never visited. A place where ships vanished without a trace. The cubs didn't understand the danger completely, but they sensed the fear in Jax's heartbeat. They hugged him from both sides as he powered up the engines. The hangar doors opened slowly, dust falling like snow as ancient gears creaked. The ship lifted gently, its thrusters humming deeper and louder. Jax guided it through the narrow shaft and burst into open sky. The moon shrank behind them as they flew into cold space. For the first time in days, Jax felt a small moment of calm. But the feeling didn't last long. A sudden alarm flashed across the screen. Multiple signatures approaching. Jax zoomed the radar out and saw it. 3 Clawseeker ships racing toward them, red engines glowing like angry eyes. The cubs gasped in fear. "They follow," the brown cub whispered. Jax tightened his grip on the controls. "Hold on," he said softly. "This won't be smooth." The hunters fired first, sending blue laser streaks across space. Jax banked the ship hard, avoiding the blasts by inches. The cargo ship was old but surprisingly agile. Jax pushed the engines to their limit, dodging between floating rocks and broken satellites.
The cubs clung to their seats, shouting small cries every time the ship shook. "Jax, home fast," the silver cub said breathlessly. Jax gave a tense smile. "Fast enough, I hope." He aimed the ship toward a narrow asteroid field. The hunters followed, but their larger ship struggled to maneuver through the tight gaps. Jax slipped between two rotating rocks, scraping the hull but staying on course. Behind them, one hunter ship clipped an asteroid and exploded into a flash of fire. The cubs cheered for a moment, but Jax stayed focused. Two hunters still remained, and they were getting closer. Suddenly, the star map device pulsed with bright golden light. A hidden path appeared, an unstable jump corridor leading straight into the forbidden sector. Jack's eyes widened. That path, it's suicide. But the cubs looked at him with desperate hope. "Mother, wait! We must go," the brown cub said softly. Jax took a deep breath. "All right, then we go." He activated the jump corridor, the ship shaking violently as the unstable energy opened a swirling tunnel of light. The hunters fired again, but the ship slipped into the glowing corridor just in time. Everything blurred, twisted, and spun like a storm of stars. The cubs held Jax's arms tightly, their fur standing up as energy crackled around them. Jax gritted his teeth, steering through the violent currents. For a moment, it felt like the world was tearing apart. Then, silence. The ship exited the corridor and drifted into the forbidden region. A broken world appeared before them, floating like a dead giant in the darkness. Black storms circled its surface, lightning flashing across ruined cities and shattered towers. Jack stared in disbelief. This place used to be alive. The silver cub whispered, "Mother here, trapped." The brown cub added, "Bad people hide her. No one come to help." Jax guided the ship through the swirling storms toward a dark crater in the planet's surface. Inside the crater stood a massive ruin shaped like a temple, ancient, cracked, glowing faintly with golden energy. The cubs pressed their faces to the window, whispering their mother's name. Jax landed the ship on a broken platform and stepped outside with the cubs. The air was heavy and buzzing with old power. The ground rumbled like something sleeping beneath it. They walked into the temple, guided by the cubs' glowing markings. At the center stood a huge energy cage made of golden and black lightning. Inside, kneeling and chained, was a tall feline woman with star-like eyes and royal markings glowing weakly on her fur. The cubs gasped and cried, "Mother!" The queen lifted her head slowly, her voice weak but filled with emotion. "My children, you lived." She looked at Jax with tired but grateful eyes. "You, human, you carried them through death." Jax stepped forward and said quietly, "I'm here to save them, and you." But before the queen could answer, the ground shook violently. Outside the temple, engines roared and shadows moved. The Claw Seekers had arrived, and this time they came with an army. The temple shook again as more engines roared outside. Dust fell from the cracked ceiling, and broken stones rattled across the floor. The cubs clung to their mother's cage, crying softly. The queen raised a weak hand and touched the energy barrier. Golden sparks flickered under her fingers. She was alive, but her power was drained, and the hunters were closing in fast. Jack stepped in front of the cubs, gripping his rifle tightly. "Stay behind me," he whispered. The queen looked at him with tired but fierce eyes. "You cannot face them alone. Their numbers are too many." Jax gave a small smile. "Maybe, but I'm not leaving you or your kids." The temple doors exploded inward. Claw Seekers stormed inside, armored boots crushing broken stones under their feet.
Their red visors glowed like burning embers in the dark hall. There were at least 20 of them, maybe more. Their leader stepped forward, tall and covered in black spikes. His voice was cold and filled with pride. "Stand down, human. The royal bloodline ends today." Jax raised his rifle instead. "Not while I'm breathing." The Clawseekers laughed, a deep metallic sound that echoed across the chamber. But the leader signaled his troops forward. Jax fired first, hitting 2 hunters before they reached the center of the room. The cubs screamed as lasers filled the air. Jax moved fast, rolling behind pillars, shooting with precision and skill learned over years of war. Every shot he fired bought one more heartbeat for the cubs, one more chance to save the queen. But the hunters were too many. One Clawseeker slammed Jax from behind, knocking him across the floor. His rifle flew from his hands, sliding far out of reach. Jax groaned, struggling to stand. The brown cub cried out, "Jax, home! No!" The leader walked toward the cubs, claws extending from his gauntlets. "Royal children, your time ends now." Before he could strike, the queen suddenly roared. Her voice echoed through the entire temple, shaking the walls. Golden light burst around her, the energy cage flickering violently. Her royal markings burned brighter than ever. With a powerful surge, she shattered the cage, the explosion of energy sending hunters flying backward. The cubs ran into her arms as she stepped free, her eyes blazing with fury and love. "Touch my children," she growled, "and face the wrath of their mother." The Clawseekers regrouped, aiming their weapons at her. But now the queen's power was rising like a storm after years of silence. Golden lightning swirled around her claws as she stepped forward. Jax grabbed his rifle and stood beside her. The queen glanced at him, surprised but grateful. "You fight for a throne not yours," she said quietly. Jax reloaded. "I'm fighting for the kids, not the throne." Together they charged. The queen moved like a storm, her claws slicing through the hunter's armor. Golden sparks flying with each strike.